Hello everyone, welcome to Internally Screening, and you join us once again for Hooptober, the series in which we cover a horror film or horror adjacent film through the month of October and quite possibly through the month of November as well. And we are back with the absolute classic Hitchcock banger from 1963, The Birds. One of the sort of sillier, on the surface films of Hitchcock's back catalogue, but an essential of the horror genre nonetheless, starring Tippi Hedren and Rod Taylor. The story surrounds Tippi Hedren and Rod Taylor's characters who meet in the big city in San Francisco. Tippi Hedren's character is the daughter of a rich family and is kind of a little bit of a hedonist, a bit of a wild child.
Degenerate socialite.
And Rod Taylor plays a PI who introduces himself knowing who she is but kind of leads her on a bit. And then the story kind of follows the two of them in this kind of unlikely romance which takes them to this secluded town in which they are suddenly set upon by the local bird population in what seems to be a highly sort of metaphorical act of God. Some kind of damnation for whatever it is has been judged of the people involved. It's a very sort of left turn, kind of psycho-esque in characters you think they're in one film but then they're in another.
Yeah, exactly.
But in spite of the sort of silly connotations of the birds attacking, it actually ends up being quite a sort of restrained and well thought out film. So
for sure.
Rupert, I know you're feeling a little sniffly.
I am ill.
So anyone in the audience is like, why does Rupert look so miserable, or more miserable
than normal? Yeah.
Be nice to him. He's
I'm
really
on death's door.
He's at death's door. he's really pulling through for us. So what do you think of The Birds?
Well, this is my second time watching it, and I liked it even more this time round. Of all the Hitchcock films that I've seen a fair few. This was kind of one of the ones that I didn't absolutely love on first watch, because normally what's so great about Hitchcock is just how immediately impactful, engaging, charming and tense and thrilling they are. Like, they're just so accessible, they're so finely put together and finely tuned throughout in terms of plot mechanics, character interactions, great setups and payoffs throughout the films. And this film is obviously, like you were saying, you were alluding to the fact that it's sort of quite a goofy concept, and it's obviously true, it's like a very goofy concept. But what's interesting is, despite the fact it's sort of more high concept and goofy, it's actually one of the more slow burn and philosophical films, which sounds really weird to say. It's actually one of his more subtle and deep films, thematically at least. It's one of those ones, I think, with a lot of older horror films, you have to, sometimes a technical achievement for its time will age quite poorly, and this film really is a technical achievement for its time. It's a 60s film, but some of the special effects that you get in this film are absolutely incredible for the time. A lot of amazing stuff that they were doing with composite shots and overlaying shots and incorporating props and real birds into shots where there are none. But despite the fact that some of those effects have obviously aged a bit and don't look 100% realistic, the film is genuinely still, to this day, in my opinion, quite scary for what it is, and really well written. Which you would think, normally it's like, the goofiness, a lot of horror films use that to be sort of an offset, so we don't have to bother with the character, right?
Yeah, we don't have to think about the writing.
Exactly, like we don't have to bother with the narrative as much because people are just here to see the birds eat people, whereas this film really takes its time. You're almost an hour into the film before anything really that spooky happens.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it really allows the characters time to breathe and establish themselves in this kind of lived-in world. And the characterization is fantastic. I think this is the first time I've seen Tippi Hedren in anything.
I think this is pretty much her most notable film.
But she's fantastic in it, as is Rod Taylor, and their chemistry is immediate, I would say. I love the setup of her sort of pretending to be a cashier at this bird shop. Yeah,
she's like a sort of disgraced prankster socialite who basically is so well off and privileged that all she really does with her life is make silly jokes and sort of silly practical jokes on people, and has obviously made a few enemies along the way, which is a kind of a unique, interesting character setup, but very Hitchcock.
Yeah, but then what's also nice is that then she meets a character that's sort of willing to go sort of toe-to-toe with her, with Rod Taylor, who also does his own kind of, she thinks she's pranking him, but really he's pranking her by lying about the fact that he he already knew who she was before.
And I love that Tippi Hedren's character is the main character in the film, because looking at her, obviously she's, you know, really good looking, completely blonde like every Alfred Hitchcock girl. You'd expect her to be kind of one of those damsel in distress kind of bimbo characters without any much writing or depth to her.
Yeah.
But what I love about it is that she really is the main character of the film and really embodies all of those flaws in actually kind of a complex way. She's not a damsel in distress for a start. She obviously gets rescued here and there, but she actually has quite a lot of agency within the plot and is also deeply flawed and has like a bit of depth to her. Like she's kind of a fucking loser.
Yeah,
which is like not something you often see in an older film, where it's like, you know, you have a female character, normally they fall into like, you know, basically angelic angel who's there to either fall in love with the main character, get shot, or both, right?
Yeah.
She's actually kind of a loser, but actually, you know, has some agency. It's the kind of character that normally like a sort of more comedic focused male actor would take.
Yeah, you could see I know he's a controversial figure now, but like a Woody Allen.
Yeah, or like a Jack Lemmon, like playing her character. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you know what, that would have been a much safer reference for me to make.
You went for the controversial one.
I went for the controversial one, but you know, it both fit.
Yeah.
For better or for worse. No, yeah, I think her characterization is fantastic. Yeah, I like that Hitchcock doesn't go straight down the line with it. And it also gives it kind of a unique flavour to the whole film. It's refreshing to see her punch back in the way that you wouldn't anticipate.
You always get that great snappy dialogue in Hitchcock films, like when they're together, the chemistry is really good. And I think because the writing's so good, it really helps.
Yeah.
They have like genuinely really great banter when they're like snapping at each other.
Yeah, and I like with Rod Taylor's character, there's a little bit of Norman Bates in it with the overbearing mother kind of thing, but like sort of in a more...
Another Hitchcock classic.
Yeah, but in a more kind of refined, restrained way. I wouldn't say refined, restrained is a better word.
In a more believable way.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying, yeah. The fact that he's super suave and good talking, but like when he like sort of is in his home environment, he's actually a bit pathetic.
Yeah, he's also just a massive fucking loser. Like, he's just a mother's boy who has basically let his mum's paranoia and worry over him govern his life. Yeah, to some extent,
which is brutal when you put it in those terms, but it's absolutely true. So yeah, they're almost a match made in heaven by a lot of metrics, and it seems that the whole happening of the birds deciding to descend and attack is a kind of cosmic retribution for their wayward nature in life.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that ambiguity in the film, because the film never really makes clear why the birds attack. They just kind of do. Yeah. And you get a sense of why it might be towards the end with that tense finale where they're leaving the house and you've got that really dramatic shot with the moon or the sun, I can't remember, but like, you know, it's got this really tense backlit sort of amazing shot where they're leaving and the birds just kind of watch them leave. Yeah. So you get a sense that, you know, the characters have completed their arc and the birds are sort of letting them go now. But
because they've learned their lesson.
Exactly, yeah. But it's never really made totally explicit why it is, which I do really enjoy. It does give it that kind of cosmic, like, what does it mean type feeling to it,
Yeah, which I like. I think that there's a certain appeal to these sorts of random acts of nature kind of staring into the cosmos and not finding any answers in it. It adds that extra layer of unnervingness. And
I mean, I don't know how much Hitchcock would have known about this when writing this film, and obviously this film is actually based off of some short story, I believe.
Actually Daphne du Maurier, which makes it his second du Maurier adaptation.
I don't know if this is something he would have known or Daphne du Maurier would have known. What's interesting about it is that you get this kind of primordial omniscience about the birds. There's like one shot in the film in particular where you're looking down at the town and you have this amazing shot of the whole town, and it's a bird looking down on the whole town, kind of like a POV shot, which kind of obviously gives you like that kind of god view of it. They have this kind of primordial sense to them, which kind of makes sense given that birds are basically dinosaurs, right? Like, I don't know
that's true.
I don't know if they would have known that at the time, but it kind of fits in really thematically, and there's some great horror shots involving the birds in the film.
Well, I think the most famous shot in the film, and one I'd forgotten was in it until it happened, is the crows in the playground.
Yeah, it's just such a like iconic shot.
Yeah, it's just wonderful because you can see it being teed up, but it's still so dramatic and powerful when it happens.
And no music as well, which I think adds so much to the film. It's really, really restrained with its music.
Yeah, I think it pulls you into a scene sometimes when the music is gone. There's this kind of weird vacuum effect in that you kind of imagine yourself more so in that situation because there's no distraction.
Yeah, exactly.
And Also, if you were in the real situation, there is no musical accompaniment, so there's that kind of like perhaps a little extra bit bridge between the viewer and the scene.
That added realism, It's still genuinely, despite obviously like if you're looking at it literally, it's like, well, it's just some birds in the playground.
Yeah.
The way the shots build up, like the shot reverse shot, it really is quite eerie.
For sure. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I will say when the film does finally sort of break out into like some genuinely just straight up horror film stuff, it actually really delivers. Like one of the early on scares in the film is kind of a throwaway scare, but is just really well executed, is where you see the sailor who has been pecked to death by birds, and his fucking eyes have been like pecked out by birds.
That's a really clever kind of addition to the film, because I say clever, it's clever with the subtlety of a pickaxe, but I like it because there is definitely a sort of question mark that would go through many audience members' heads, I would imagine, which is, how are you going to make birds intimidating?
Yeah.
Birds aren't that frightening to me.
Yeah.
And the film does a good job with its imagery anyway, and just like the sort of sheer numbers and things like that.
I was going to say,
and like
get a shitload of them, and you'll be scared.
And there's that sort of quiet, cold menace in their eyes and things like that, you know. But having it be like, oh yeah, well, birds have really sharp beaks, so they will go straight for your eyes. Like, it's fucking brutal, but it really pays off.
The fact that it genuinely makes a real sense of terror from birds is quite impressive. And they doesn't even go into like getting like eagles or like
it's
like
just
that.
seagulls.
It's pretty much just seagulls,
crows.
crows, maybe like ravens, I don't know. Like that, and that's pretty much it. I also absolutely love the completely chaotic scene right in the middle of the film, where everyone's hiding out in the diner and just suddenly the birds descend, and like everything that could go wrong just starts going wrong, and you have like a car explodes because the oil, and the guy like falls over and the oil's spilling down the street, and it's just
like the guy getting out of his car with a lit cigarette going bang, and then
it genuinely kicks off in a way that is really also just technically impressive at the time, in the way that Hitchcock is such a concise storyteller with how he frames things as well. Like, it's so easy to follow. It would be so easy for a lesser filmmaker to use the chaos in a scene like that to kind of smother his cinematic language, make it a bit easier for him to just kind of like, I will put this shot here, put this shot here.
Just like really scattershot.
Like, there's just not. There's something I absolutely love about Hitchcock is it's very simple filmmaking in a sense, in that he just shows you what he wants you to see. And just like really specifically paces it out.
Specific things breathe.
Yes.
Even though they're happening in a chaotic order, and like what you're seeing is pure sort of chaos. You're getting like, even if it's just a 2-second shot of a car going past on fire, you get that whole thing. It's not just edited within an inch of its life, as you would get in so many more sort of modern examples. Particularly, I think, in the mid-2000s with the influence of the likes of Michael Bay and things. People sort of took to over-editing.
The beauty of the Hitchcock films is he'll have like a long take. Like, he's obviously done a film that is made to look like a whole one take with rope, but he's also not one of those directors who will rely on long takes to sort of flex, or to like, this is the only way I can get this scene to work clearly. Like, his films are really well edited for suspense as well. Like, and I think one of the most suspenseful scenes in the film is the final scene in the house. Where they're like hiding out, and it's kind of becomes like a Call of Duty Zombies, where they're like boarding up the doors.
And then you kind of and you have the waves of zombies, because it's like you have these periods of calm and then these periods of chaos again, and then things settle down. Which is what's kind of interesting, and what kind of makes you question the motivations of the birds, and this kind of what's really going on underneath it all. Because if it was all just purely as a means of slaughtering them, why would they?
It's almost like they're there to torment the characters, as opposed to like actually try and kill them. Like, because there are several points in the film where the birds could reasonably have, killed them. So you do get this kind of sense of, is it just like some unknowable, like ancient evil, like that's punishing them? But I think the ambiguity around the birds' motivations, or what the whole thing means, really makes the film, because the film never has to divulge into some like exposition where, they go to the old seaman who goes, "It was a prophecy upon the sea, the birds shall descend upon ye."
A deity? What kind of deity?
A very obscure one, dating back to Babylonian times, named
Bagul, the eater of children.
If there was like a 2005 remake of this film, 100% that scene is in there somewhere, and it would make it so much worse, right? Because the one of the great things about this film is, like we're saying, it's so well written. All the characters feel so real, and the world feels so lived in. So you get all the good stuff with the character progression and the way the characters' relationships evolve. Particularly, I think the mother character brings like an interesting dynamic in.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about what is the fucking weird horror mechanic that is, guiding the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's just...
It's birds, don't think about it.
Yeah,
and that's that. And which is good, because it's not, the point of the film is not the birds. It's not a mystery about how do we stop the birds. It's about the characters and how they interact with the situation, what they do to get through. Some films do revolve more around that. We need to solve a mystery. But this film isn't that, and it doesn't need to be that, and not all horror films have to rely on that.
Well, and I think that's true as well, because the way the film ends kind of backs your point up there, because it ends up being, they don't defeat the birds, they just kind of have to get through the birds. They just kind of have to accept what's happened and move on. Yeah. Which, very much speaks to that point.
Good luck killing every bird.
I was thinking this whole film, they just need a really good fucking flamethrower. True.
Yeah. They need to pop into like Quentin Tarantino's closet.
And if they ever do a remake of this, they've got to set it in Venice, really up the stakes. I want them to all be pigeons.
Pigeons in Venice. Pigeons in Trafalgar Square, mate.
Oh, true.
Jesus Christ.
Hell.
Everyone's hiding out in the National
It'd be a genocide
gallery.
I don't fancy that.
Now you got me thinking about what if, hilarious animal location combos.
You could have like the ants, but it's just like set in, I don't know, a sand pit, a children's sand pit. I don't know. Where do you get ants?
What, only in children's sand pits?
I remember getting loads of ants in my sand pit when I was a kid. Do you know what I mean? Or like, just say it in Bird World, Bird World.
It's Bird World, but they're all in cages.
Yeah, but they get out. Whoa!
I was wondering if you do there's so many aquatic themed, shark horror films, right? But instead of it just being sharks, or you exclusively use like really unthreatening fish, like the sardines.
Yeah, but then like, what are they gonna do? There's just no film. The fish are just like jumping out of the water and dying.
They smother you to death. I don't know. I haven't thought this.
We've been on this tangent for too long.
One thing I want to mention before we wrap up is that there is an amazing side character in the diner scene. The diner scene's a good kind of opportunity to flesh out some of the sort of the townspeople in a very minimal way.
Yeah, and it backs up some of the themes we were talking about as well.
Yeah, of people being kind of stuck in their ways, or kind of, and the fact that this attack is taking place.
It's a really brief scene that establishes quite a lot of. There's obviously the Bible reference by the guy.
Yes.
And you also like have a kind of brief, quite interesting little exchange that kind of reveals the psychology of the situation in a really effective way. Yeah,
exactly, yeah. But the guy that talks about the Bible reference is one of my favourite side characters in any of these films we've watched so far for Hooptober, because he has just some amazing line delivery.
Immaculate line delivery,
and he's your classic, beware the evil approaches, but then they kind of cut back, they like sort of clap back at him, and he's like, yeah, I'm a fucking drunk. What of it?
It's the end of the world. Thus saith the Lord God unto the mountains and the hills and the rivers and the valleys. Even I shall bring a sword upon you, and I will devastate your high places. Ezekiel chapter 6.
Woe unto them that rise up early in the morning, that they may follow strong drink.
Isaiah chapter 5. It's the end of the world.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess the only real criticisms I have of the film are, I think some of the sound editing has aged quite poorly.
Yeah.
It's kind of to be expected, I guess, but some of the bird effects, like especially the sound effects, I think.
Yeah, they're really screechy.
Sometimes it's kind of effective, sometimes it takes some of the immersion away. And obviously, I love the visuals of the film for their datedness, but some of the like composite stuff does look a little bit janky today.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, right? Yeah. Well, you've got stuff where it's like the shadowing's wrong. So like, say you've got
scaling slightly.
Yeah.
Off as
so
well.
Say like you have what essentially looks like sort of GIFs moving across the screen at some point. Sometimes there's like sort of artifacting, or I don't know. Artifacting is more of a digital phenomenon.
What they had to do for this film, from what I read on the production, was completely new at the time.
Yeah.
It had literally never been done.
Right.
Like this idea of like keyframing in animations over like a live action thing. Like they've pretty much never done it. They had to do who they had like a whole team of people, like several teams of people, I believe, basically just spending their time doing this.
Right.
So it's to be expected, but I mean that is a real criticism of the film.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely for audiences of our age, it will be a sort of a leap one has to make before approaching the film. But that said, like it's a groundbreaking moment, and it's valuable if only for that. But it also manages to be a fantastic film in spite of those limitations.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, at the end of all that, what do you reckon you would give The Birds?
I'm giving it a solid 8 out of 10.
Nice.
Classic film. If you like horror, you have to watch it.
Yeah, I won't go as high as that. I'll probably just go for a 7 for now. I've only seen it the once, so I'm looking forward to coming back to it. We've been doing a little bit sort of between, watching films for this. We've been having a little bit of a Hitchcock marathon.
We have, yeah.
So, I'm sure we'll come back round to it, and when we do, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
I do still really love this film. But yeah, I'll go a 7 for now. Solid 7. And as you say, a must watch for any horror fans that haven't seen it. But that about wraps things up for us. Thank you very much for watching. If you have stuck around this far, give it a like if you enjoyed this video, and consider subscribing to the channel for more content like this, as well as reactions and other shit that we feel like. And if you dislike this video and you have some sort of arguments you want to wage in the comments, please leave them down below and give the review a dislike. And we will be back for more horror goodness shortly. I've been Adam.
I've been Rupert.
And we've been Internally Screening. Peace.
Peace.